You know what's funny? The moment you stop trying to prove yourself to people who never believed in you is the exact moment you finally become unstoppable. It took me 28 years to learn that lesson, and it cost me most of my childhood. I was 7 years old when I first understood that some children are loved differently than others, not less. My mother would insist, years later, during one of our tense holiday dinners, just differently, but I knew the truth. I'd always known it. My sister Veronica was born golden. That's the only way I can describe it. She came into this world 3 years before me with perfect blonde curls that caught the light like a halo, bright blue eyes that strangled every adult in a 10-foot radius, and this laugh god. This musical little laugh that made my parents melt every single time. When I arrived, dark-haired and quiet and perpetually serious even as a baby, I think my parents were confused. Like they'd ordered the same meal twice and gotten something completely different the second time. Why doesn't she smile more? I remember my mom asking my dad when I was maybe 4 or 5. I was sitting right there at the kitchen table, coloring with crayons that were already broken because Veronica had used them first and left them scattered across the floor. Veronica was always so joyful at this age. I didn't know how to explain that. I did smile, just not at the same things. Not at being the center of attention or performing for relatives or wearing matching outfits with my sister for Christmas cards. I smiled when I finished a puzzle by myself, when I figured out how to read a new word, when I sat in the backyard and watched the crows build their nests in the oak tree, their clever black eyes studying me like I was studying them. But those moments were invisible to my parents. They only saw what Veronica reflected back at them: brightness, charm, effortless perfection. Our house in suburban Ohio was a 3-bedroom ranch with beige siding and a yard. My dad never quite kept up with the way he planned to. It wasn't a bad house. It wasn't a bad childhood, really. That's what made it so hard to explain. Later, when people would ask why I barely spoke to my family anymore, "Were you abused?" A therapist asked me once in college. "No," I said. "Nothing that dramatic." "Neglected?" I hesitated. Not in the obvious ways. It's difficult to articulate the specific pain of being the less favorite child. There's no bruising, no clear evidence, just 1,000 tiny moments that build up like sediment until you're buried under the weight of them. When Veronica wanted piano lessons, my parents enrolled her with Mrs. Patterson, the best teacher in town, $60 an hour. When I asked for art classes a year later, my mom said we couldn't afford it. "Besides, honey, you draw all the time anyway. You don't need classes for that." When Veronica made the cheerleading squad in 8th grade, my parents threw her a party with all her friends and a custom cake. When I made the honor roll straight A's for the 3rd semester in a row, my dad said, "Good job," without looking up from his phone. I tutored kids in math after school for free. I volunteered at the library every Saturday. I taught myself basic coding using free online resources. But none of that was visible. Enough. Social enough. Veronica, enough. The worst part wasn't even the favoritism itself. It was the gaslighting that came with it. "We love you both equally," my mother would insist, whenever I worked up the courage to mention the imbalance. "We just parent you differently because you're different people. You're so independent, Bailey. You don't need as much attention." Independent. That was their favorite word for me. It was code for "we can ignore you and feel okay about it because you seem fine on your own." The truth was, I'd learned to be independent because I had no choice. When you're 7 and your parents forget to pick you up from school because they're at Veronica's dance recital, you figure out how to walk home yourself. When you're 10 and nobody shows up to your 5th grade science fair where you built a working model of the water cycle, you learn to celebrate your own victories privately. When you're 13 and crying in your bedroom because kids at school made fun of your thrift store clothes while Veronica got $200 to shop at the mall, you learn that no one's coming to comfort you. So you dry your own tears. You become your own comfort. You become independent. By high school, the pattern was set in stone. Veronica was the star cheerleading captain, prom queen, dating the quarterback in a clitch so perfect it was almost parody. My parents' entire social life revolved around her activities: football games, cheer competitions, weekend shopping trips for homecoming dresses. They knew all her friends' names, all the drama in her social circle, every detail of every party she went to. They barely knew which classes I was taking. AP chemistry? My dad said once, looking confused when I mentioned it at dinner. "Since when are you interested in science?" "Since freshman year," I said quietly. I'm in AP Bio, too. And AP Calc. Wow, my mom said, but she was already looking at Veronica, who was showing her something on her phone. Some picture from a party. Judging by the squealing, I excused myself and went to my room. Sat on my bed and stared at the acceptance letter I'd hidden in my desk drawer. Full academic scholarship to Ohio State University. Early admission. They wanted me to join their honors program. The letter had arrived 3 days ago, and I hadn't told my parents yet because I knew exactly how the conversation would go. They'd say, "Congratulations." They'd hug me probably, but within 5 minutes, the conversation would shift to Veronica's college plans, her campus visits, how she was still deciding between schools based on which had the best sorority life. Never mind that her GPA was barely a 3.0, and my parents were going to have to take out massive loans to send her anywhere that wasn't community college. I didn't tell them about the scholarship that night. I waited until Veronica had announced her acceptance to Miami University, a party school that costs $40,000 a year, and my parents celebrated with champagne. Then, I mentioned Ohio State at dinner the following Tuesday. "That's great, honey," my mom said. "When did you apply?" "November. Early decision. Full scholarship." My dad looked up. "Full scholarship? Everything? Tuition, room and board, books, plus a stipend?" My parents exchanged a look I couldn't quite read. "That's really impressive, Bailey," my dad said. "So we won't have to pay anything?" My mom's relief was obvious. College was my escape hatch. 4 years away from home, building a life my parents knew nothing about. I studied computer science and economics, double major, because I'd discovered I had a talent for understanding systems, how they worked, how to optimize them, how to find the inefficiencies and fix them. I got internships every summer, each one paying a little more than the last. I learned how to dress professionally, how to interview, how to network without feeling like I was being fake. I became someone my 17-year-old self would have been proud of, but I barely went home. Maybe Christmas, if I couldn't avoid it. Thanksgiving once or twice. My parents never asked why I didn't visit more. I think they were relieved, honestly. It meant they could focus on Veronica, who'd dropped out of Miami after 2 years, moved back home, and was finding herself by working part-time at a boutique and dating a series of guys my parents hated. During one of those rare visits home Christmas of my senior year, I overheard my parents talking in the kitchen. I'd come down for water and froze on the stairs when I heard my name. "I just think Bailey could help out more," my mom was saying. "She's got that fancy internship lined up after graduation. She'll be making good money. We can't ask her to support Veronica," my dad said, but he didn't sound convinced. "Not support her, just help. Veronica's going through a hard time. She needs to find her passion, and that takes time. Bailey's always been so career-focused. She doesn't understand what it's like to need time to figure things out." I gripped the banister so hard my knuckles went white. Bailey's had to figure everything out on her own since she was a kid, my dad said quietly. It was the closest he'd ever come to acknowledging the truth, and my heart almost broke open with hope. "That's not fair," my mom said. "We've supported both girls equally." And just like that, the hope died. I went back upstairs without getting water, packed my bag quietly, left at 6 in the morning before anyone woke up, leaving a note that said I had to get back early for work. It was a lie, but they wouldn't question it. Bailey was always working, always busy, always independent. I graduated summa cum laude that May. My parents didn't come to the ceremony. Veronica had a crisis that same weekend involving a breakup and needed them home. I walked across that stage alone, accepted my diploma alone, celebrated with my friends who'd become my real family. When I got the job offer from a tech company in Seattle, 6-figure starting salary, stock options, relocation package, I accepted immediately. Didn't ask my parents' opinion. Didn't tell them until 2 weeks before I moved, and even then it was just a brief phone call. "Seattle?" My mom said. "That's so far away." "I know. We'll never see you." "You don't see me now," I said. It came out sharper than I'd intended, but I didn't take it back. There was a long silence. "We love you, Bailey," she said finally. "I know," I said again. "I love you too." Both statements were true. Both statements were also insufficient to bridge the gap between us. Seattle was everything I needed it to be. Rain-soaked and anonymous, and 3,000 miles from Ohio. I threw myself into work with the same intensity I'd thrown myself into school. I was good at what I did, really good. Within 2 years, I'd been promoted twice. Within 4 years, I was leading a team. Within 6 years, I was being courted by recruiters from every major tech company on the West Coast. I lived in a nice apartment in Capitol Hill, all exposed brick and huge windows overlooking the city. I dated casually, made friends slowly, built a life that felt entirely mine. I went to therapy and slowly untangled all the knots my childhood had tied in my psyche. I learned that my parents' inability to see me wasn't a reflection of my worth. I learned that I could grieve the childhood I should have had, while still being proud of who I'd become. I learned that I didn't need their approval to approve of myself. I didn't talk to my parents much during those years. A call on birthdays, maybe. Obligatory texts on holidays. They never visited Seattle, and I only went back to Ohio once, for my grandmother's funeral. Veronica was there with her new boyfriend, some guy named Brett who worked in car sales and talked too loud. She'd gained some weight, lost some of that golden girl shine. But my parents still orbited around her like she was the sun. Bailey's doing so well in Seattle, my mom told relatives at the funeral reception, and I could hear the performative pride in her voice. Look how successful our daughter is. Never mind that she could barely remember the name of my company or what I did there. I left the day after the funeral. Veronica cried and asked why I was in such a hurry, and I almost laughed. 8 years of living across the country, and she still thought we were close. Then, last year, everything shifted. I was 34 and being headhunted for a VP position at a startup that had just gone through a major funding round. The offer was obscene high six figures, significant equity, the kind of opportunity you don't turn down. But the company was based in Columbus, Ohio, just 2 hours from my hometown. I almost said no for that reason alone. But then I thought, why should I let my family's geography limit my career? I was an adult. I didn't have to see them if I didn't want to. Columbus was a real city with nearly 1 million people. I could build a life there completely separate from my past. So I accepted. The move back to Ohio was surreal. I found a condo in the short north, all modern glass and steel, nothing like the suburban sprawl I'd grown up in. I bought new furniture, expensive art for the walls, turned the second bedroom into a home office with a view of the city skyline. This was my space, my success, tangible proof that I'd made it entirely on my own terms. I didn't tell my parents I was back in the state for almost 3 months when I finally called. My mom's shock was almost comical. You're in Columbus? Since when? Since February. February. Bailey, it's May. I know. I've been busy with the new job. You could have told us. We would have helped you move. I doubted that, but I didn't say so. It's fine. I had professional movers, she repeated, and I could hear the slight judgment. Too fancy, too much. Well, you have to come visit. Veronica would love to see you. She's engaged now. Did I tell you? She had, in a text I'd barely glanced at. That's great. Congratulations to her. We're planning the wedding. It's going to be beautiful. August next year at the Brookside Country Club. Very elegant. I made non-committal sounds while my mom talked about flower arrangements and bridesmaid dresses and whether they should do a plated dinner or buffet. She didn't ask about my job. Didn't ask why I'd moved back to Ohio or what I was doing in Columbus. When I finally got off the phone, I sat in my expensive condo and felt exactly the way I'd felt at 7 years old, invisible. But I was done chasing their attention, done trying to prove myself worthy of their love. I had my career, my independence, my own life. That was enough, or so I thought. The wedding planning consumed my family for the next year. Every phone call with my mom was a litany of details about Veronica's big day. The dress fittings, the venue, the photographer they'd hired for $5,000, the custom cake with gold leaf frosting. It was going to cost them at least $60,000, I calculated. Listening to my mom stress about whether they should take out a second mortgage or drain their retirement savings. Can't Veronica and Brett pay for some of it? I asked once. My mom laughed. On their salaries? Brett's commission-based, and Veronica's just working part-time at the salon now. They're saving for a house. Right. Of course. Maybe you could help out, my mom said casually. I know you're doing well in Columbus. It would mean so much to your sister. I felt that old familiar anger rise in my throat. I don't think so, Bailey. I said no, Mom. We didn't speak for 2 weeks after that. When she finally called again, she didn't mention the money. Just went back to talking about the wedding like our conversation had never happened. I was invited, obviously. Veronica asked me to be a bridesmaid in a text message that felt obligatory, more than genuine. I declined politely, said I'd be happy to attend as a guest. She seemed relieved, honestly. Probably didn't want me in the wedding photos anyway. Standing there in my bridesmaid dress like a dark cloud, next to all her bubbly blonde friends, the wedding was scheduled for August 18th. I'd already bought a nice dress, already marked it on my calendar. I planned to show up, smile politely, leave early. Simple. Then 3 weeks before the wedding, my mom called with panic in her voice. Bailey, I need to ask you something. And before you say no, just, please listen. I braced myself. Okay? Your father and I are in a difficult position financially. The weddings cost more than we budgeted for, and we've had some unexpected expenses. And she took a shaky breath. We're going to lose the house. I sat up straighter. What? The mortgage payments are too high. We refinanced a few years ago to help Veronica with some debt. And then we took out that second mortgage for the wedding. And with your dad's hours being cut at work, she was crying now. We're 3 months behind. The bank's starting foreclosure proceedings. I felt like I'd been punched. Jesus, Mom, why didn't you tell me sooner? We didn't want to worry you. We thought we could figure it out. But the house is worth less than we owe on it now. And we can't sell it. And we're going to lose it, Bailey. We're going to lose our home. The house I'd grown up in. The beige ranch with the overgrown yard and the oak tree where the crows nested. Despite everything, despite all the painful memories, it was still the house where I'd learned to read, where I'd solved my first math problem, where I'd existed. How much do you need? I heard myself ask. To save the house? About $40,000 to get current on payments and legal fees. But we can't ask you for that, Bailey. That's too much. $40,000. 2/3 of what they were spending on Veronica's wedding. Are you canceling the wedding? I asked. Long pause. We can't do that to Veronica. She's been planning this for a year. All her friends, Brett's family, everything's paid for already. The deposits are non-refundable. Of course, so you're going to lose your house so Veronica can have a fancy wedding. It's not like that, it's exactly like that. Mom. I was surprised by how calm my voice sounded. You've spent $60,000 on a party while your mortgage went unpaid. That's not fair. We didn't know things would get this bad. Did you ask Veronica to contribute? To scale back? Silence. I'll take that as a no, I said. She's already stressed about the wedding. We can't burden her with this. But you can burden me, I thought. The independent one. The one who doesn't need as much attention. I need to think about it, I said. Bailey, please, I said I'll think about it. I'll call you back. I hung up and sat in my condo, staring out at the Columbus skyline. $40,000. I had it. I had way more than that, actually, sitting in my savings and investments. I could write a check right now and solve their problem without even denting my financial security. But the question wasn't whether I could. It was whether I should. I called my therapist, got an emergency session. After an hour unpacking old resentments, Dr. Morrison asked the question I'd been avoiding. What do you want to do, Bailey? I want to buy their house, I said. Explain. The bank's foreclosing. The house is underwater. But if I buy it from the bank, I could own it outright. Let my parents rent from me if they want. And that feels right to you? It feels like taking control, I said. For once, I spent the next week doing research, making calls, consulting with a real estate lawyer. The house was already in pre-foreclosure, which meant the bank would be motivated to sell. My parents owed about $200,000 on it, but the current market value was closer to $180,000. If I offered the bank $190,000 cash, they'd probably take it to avoid the foreclosure process. I made the offer. The bank accepted within 48 hours. Then I called my mother. I've thought about your situation, I said. And I have a solution. I could hear the hope in her voice. Oh, Bailey, thank you. I knew you'd help. 40,000 would. I'm not giving you $40,000, I interrupted. I'm buying the house. Silence. What? I've already made an offer to the bank, and they've accepted it. I'm purchasing the house outright. The foreclosure will be stopped. Once the sale goes through, the house will belong to me. You can't. That's our house, Bailey. We've lived here for 35 years, and you're losing it because you chose Veronica's wedding over your mortgage payments. This way, at least it stays in the family. But where are we supposed to live? My mom's voice was rising, panicky. You can rent from me, I said calmly. I'll charge you below market rate, $1,500 a month, utilities included. That's less than half what your mortgage payment was. Rent from you? Our own daughter? Yes. Or you can find somewhere else to live. Your choice. This is cruel, Bailey. This is so cruel. I felt that old guilt trying to rise up, but I pushed it down. What's cruel is spending my entire childhood being treated like I didn't matter. What's cruel is you calling me for money only after you've bankrupted yourselves for Veronica. What's cruel is you asking me to fund her wedding while you lose your house. We never treated you like you didn't matter. Mom, stop. We both know that's not true. Another long silence. I'm buying the house, I continued. The paperwork's already in process. You can rent from me or you can move, but those are the only options. I hung up before she could respond. The next 3 weeks were chaos. My parents tried everything: anger, guilt, bargaining, crying. Veronica called me screaming, called me a bitch, said I was ruining her wedding. I blocked her number. My dad sent me long emails about family loyalty and forgiveness. I deleted them without responding, but I didn't back down. The sale went through on August 10th, 8 days before Veronica's wedding. I was now the owner of a 3-bedroom ranch in suburban Ohio, the house where I'd grown up invisible. My parents signed a rental agreement the next day. They didn't have a choice. I didn't go to the wedding. Instead, I spent that Saturday at the house, walking through rooms I hadn't seen in years. My old bedroom, still painted the same lavender I'd chosen when I was 12. The kitchen where I'd overheard my parents deciding I didn't need as much attention. The living room where they'd celebrated Veronica's every achievement, while mine went unnoticed. It was just a house. Beige siding, overgrown yard, nothing special. But now it was mine. I stood in the backyard and looked up at the oak tree. The crows were still there, building their nests like they had when I was 7. They looked down at me with those clever black eyes, and I felt something settle in my chest. Something like peace. My phone rang. My mom. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Bailey. Her voice was small. The wedding's over. It was beautiful. I'm glad. You should have been there. No, I said gently. I shouldn't have. And we both know it. Silence. Then, when did you get so hard? When I had to raise myself, I said. When I learned that love was something I had to earn by being invisible and convenient and never needing anything. I heard her breath catch. We loved you differently. I finished. I know. You've said that before. But Mom, different doesn't always mean equal. And I'm done pretending it does. More silence. The house looks nice, she said finally, changing the subject. You've already fixed the garage door. I hired a contractor. The roof needs work too. I'll get that done next month. It's strange paying rent to my own daughter. It's strange buying the house your parents chose to lose rather than scale back your sister's wedding, I countered. I guess we're both in strange territory now. I could hear her crying softly. Part of me wanted to comfort her, to take it all back, to be the easy daughter who asked for nothing and accepted everything. But I was done being that girl. I'm going to hang up now, I said. The rent's due on the 1st of each month. Don't be late. I ended the call and sat down on the back porch steps. The August sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The crows cawed to each other in the oak tree, settling in for the night. I thought about 7-year-old Bailey, walking home from school alone because her parents forgot her. I thought about 13-year-old Bailey, crying in her bedroom with nobody coming to comfort her. I thought about 18-year-old Bailey, accepting a full scholarship and knowing her parents were relieved they wouldn't have to pay. I thought about all the versions of myself who'd needed parents who saw her and never got them. I see you. I whispered to those ghost girls. I see you, and I'm proud of you, and you did good. The crows called back, and it sounded like agreement. I stayed at the house until the sky turned dark. Then I drove back to my condo in Columbus, to my successful career and my expensive furniture and my life that I'd built entirely on my own. Not because my parents believed in me, not because anyone championed me, or cleared a path for me, or celebrated my victories, but because I'd learned the most important lesson anyone can learn. That the only approval that really matters is your own. The months after buying the house brought changes I hadn't anticipated. My relationship with my parents settled into something distant but functional, polite exchanges about maintenance issues, brief confirmations of rent payments, nothing deeper. We'd established a landlord-tenant dynamic that felt safer than trying to maintain the illusion of a close family. But Veronica was a different story. She showed up at my condo unannounced one rainy October evening, 3 months after her wedding. I almost didn't answer the intercom, but curiosity got the better of me. She looked different standing in my doorway. Smaller somehow, without all the glitter and confidence she'd always worn. Like armor. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, her makeup minimal. She looked, for the first time in my memory, uncertain. "Can I come in?" she asked. I stepped aside wordlessly. She walked into my living room and I watched her take it all in: the exposed brick, the original artwork, the floor-to-ceiling windows with the city view. The kind of place she used to talk about wanting someday. Back when she thought wanting something was the same as earning it. "This is nice," she said quietly. "Thank you." We stood there awkwardly for a moment. I didn't offer her anything to drink, didn't invite her to sit, just waited. "Brett left me," she said finally, 2 weeks after the wedding. "Turns out he was cheating with one of my bridesmaids for 6 months." I felt a flicker of sympathy despite myself. "I'm sorry. Are you?" She looked at me with something raw in her eyes. "I wouldn't blame you if you weren't. If you thought I deserved it." "I don't think you deserve to be cheated on, Veronica." "Nobody does." She nodded, blinking back tears. "Mom and Dad are devastated. They keep saying how much they spent on the wedding, how embarrassing it is that it only lasted 2 weeks. Like that's the worst part of it all." "Of course they did. Why are you here?" I asked, not unkindly. Veronica sank onto my couch uninvited, and I let her. She looked exhausted. "I wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. For the wedding, for calling you a bitch, she gestured vaguely. For all of it. My whole life, really." I sat down in the chair across from her, waiting. "I knew," she said. "I always knew Mom and Dad treated you differently. I just didn't care because it benefited me. Every time they took me shopping and left you home. Every time they came to my events and missed yours. Every time they chose me, I knew it was wrong. I just didn't want to give it up." It was the most honest thing she'd ever said to me. "I was a kid," she continued. "But I'm not anymore. And I can see now what I couldn't see then. That you had to fight for everything while I just existed and got handed things. That you became someone incredible despite them, while I became nobody because of them." "You're not nobody," I said. "I'm 28 years old, divorced after 2 weeks of marriage, living with my parents, working part-time at a salon. What have I actually accomplished, Bailey? Name one thing." I couldn't, and we both knew it. "They never pushed me," she said. "Never expected anything from me except to be pretty and popular and make them look good. And I thought that meant they loved me more. But now I wonder if they just never believed I could be more than that." It was a realization I'd had about myself years ago, in therapy. That sometimes the expectations placed on you or not placed on you reveal more about how people see you than any words they say. "What do you want from me, Veronica?" I asked. "Forgiveness? Permission to feel bad? I don't know." She wiped her eyes. "Maybe just to tell you that you were right. About all of it. And that I'm trying to figure out who I am when I'm not the favorite anymore." I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and saw something I'd never seen before. Fear. The same fear I'd felt my entire childhood, of not being enough, of not mattering. She was just meeting it 30 years late. "It's hard," I said. "Figuring out who you are. Building something that's actually yours. It's going to take time." "Did you forgive them?" she asked. "Mom and Dad?" I thought about it. I accepted that they are who they are. That's not quite the same thing. "Do you think you'll ever forgive me?" "I don't know," I said honestly, "but I appreciate you coming here, saying this." She nodded and stood up. "I should go. I needed you to know that I see it now. How unfair it all was. How strong you had to be." I walked her to the door. Before she left, she turned back. "For what it's worth, I'm really proud of you, Bailey. I know that doesn't mean much coming from me, but I am." After she left, I stood at my window and watched the rain fall on Columbus. My phone sat silent on the counter. No calls from my parents asking how the conversation went. No texts checking in. They probably didn't even know Veronica had come, but that was okay. I didn't need them to witness this moment to make it real. My phone buzzed with a text from my mom. "Veronica wants to know if you'll come to family dinner next Sunday. She says she wants to talk to you." I looked at the message for a long time. Thought about all the family dinners where I'd sat invisible at the table. all the conversations that flowed around me without ever including me. I typed back, "I'm busy." It wasn't true. My Sundays were wide open. But my time, my energy, my emotional labor, those were no longer free. Not for people who'd proven over and over that they didn't value them. I'd spent 28 years trying to be enough for my parents, trying to earn their attention, their pride, their love. Now, at 34, I was finally enough for myself, and that was the only validation I needed. I fell asleep that night in my expensive condo, in my king-size bed, with the view of the city skyline. And I didn't dream about my childhood or my family or the house I now owned. I dreamed about the crows in the oak tree, building their nests with careful precision, their black eyes wise and knowing. When I woke up, I felt lighter than I had in years. Some people spend their whole lives waiting for their parents to see them. I'd stopped waiting. I'd learned to see myself instead, and in doing so, I'd found something more valuable than their approval. I'd found my freedom. The house sits in suburban Ohio. Beige siding slowly being repaired, yards slowly being tamed. My parents live there and pay me rent on the first of every month. Sometimes the payment's on time. Sometimes it's late. Sometimes my mom calls and asks if she can pay half now and half later, her voice tight with humiliation. And every time, I'm polite and firm and unwavering, because this isn't about cruelty. It's not even about revenge. Not really. It's about understanding that I was never going to get the childhood I deserved. Never going to get the parents I needed. Never going to hear them say they were sorry for all the ways they made me feel small. But I could give myself the adulthood I wanted, the success I earned, the respect I demanded, and I could finally close the door on the girl who waited by the window for someone to notice she existed. She doesn't wait anymore. She bought the whole damn house.